What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Israel Adesanya surprised by betting odds going into UFC 281. When the UFC announced a middleweight showdown between Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira for UFC 281, many felt as though the time had finally come for Pereira to complete his trilogy sweep of the last stylebender. With the UFC championship on the line, it seemed like much of the MMA community believed that the challenger would once again knock out Adesanya, this time en route to winning the middleweight title. Despite that, however, the odds have been pretty close for the fight, with Adesanya holding out as a slight betting favorite throughout the course of training camp. Considering how many people are counting him out, the champion was surprised this week when he saw the betting odds had him as the favorite for the fight.
I saw it last night. I was like, why am I the favorite in this on the betting odds? I never check them, but I just happened to see something on Instagram, and I was like, how the fuck am I like the favorite? I feel like we should change that or something. How can you change that? Fake an injury?
Trip over at the press conference?
I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I think people should bet on him on this fight. Yeah, just see what happens.
The pair wound up trading barbs later in the day during the UFC 281 pre-fight press conference. Although the two men remained composed, things got tense as they sent verbal jabs at one another in front of a packed crowd. With the fight just days away, it'll be interesting to see how things play out when these two old rivals square off for the third time. How do you see the fight going? Give us your predictions in the comments section below. Michael Chandler weighs in on Makhachev versus Volkanovski fight. When Islam Makhachev defeated Charles Oliveira to become the lightweight champion in the main event of UFC 280, all signs pointed to the newly crowned champ defending his belt against Alexander Volkanovski next. With Volkanovski slated to be the fill-in fighter prior to the bout, it only makes sense that the 145-pound king get the first crack at the champion. Since the two met face-to-face in the octagon following Makhachev's win in Abu Dhabi, there's been little to no updates regarding the bout. Initially, it seemed as though a showdown in early 2023 would be the next move. However, as the pair have pointed out during recent back and forths on Twitter, there have been no contracts signed and no formal dates offered by the UFC. The way Michael Chandler sees things, it's only fair for Makhachev to defend the 155-pound belt before holding up the division with a champion versus champion fight. He spoke to media members prior to the UFC 281 press conference in New York this week to discuss the situation at 155 pounds.
And I think he's a phenomenal talent. I also think he needs to have his first title defense against a lightweight. He needs to get through another lightweight before they start talking about super fights. Once again, I don't say that to say that the UFC is making a bad decision or the wrong decision if they make that decision to let Volkanovski move up.
Of course, Chandler will step into the octagon this weekend to fight Dustin Poirier in a fight that he believes could very well determine the next #1 contender at lightweight. Of course, waiting for his own crack at the champ is Beneil Dariush, who is currently in the midst of an 8-fight winning streak that recently saw him pick up an impressive win over Mateusz Gamrot at UFC 280. Given the logjam of contenders at lightweight, how do you see things playing out? Will Volkanovski get the next crack at the title while the winner of Poirier vs. Chandler fights Beneil Dariush to determine who the #1 contender is? Or should Makhachev defend the title against a 155-pound contender first? Play matchmaker in the comments below. Daniel Cormier admits opinion on Jon Jones has changed. There's certainly no love lost between Daniel Cormier and Jon Jones. The two bitter rivals were at each other's throats for a number of years, specifically after the UFC 178 Media Day in Las Vegas, where they came to blows. Of course, after that, the pair met twice inside the octagon, where Jones picked up 2 wins over his bitter rival. Although the two men have never publicly made up and likely have no intentions of doing so, they are forever linked after that fateful 2014 day in Las Vegas. While the two men may never move past their bitter rivalry, Cormier admits that recently his opinion on Jones has changed, specifically regarding Jones's move to heavyweight. Given the fact that the former pound-for-pound kingpin hasn't fought since his early 2019 win over Dominic Reyes, many have questioned whether he will be able to make a successful return to the octagon when the time comes. According to Cormier, however, after all this time, he's beginning to believe that Jones will have no trouble making a dominant return at heavyweight. During a recent sit-down on the MMA Hour, he spoke about Jones's return.
My opinion of him has changed in this regard, that I think that he's so talented that regardless, he'll be okay. And I also believe that he's going to he'll make sure that he still can compete. You know what's crazy? Like, everybody's talking about 3 years, but like, there are other people that have come back. Georges St. Pierre won a championship after being away all that time.
Considering the fact that Jones's return will likely come against heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou, the former pound-for-pound king certainly has his work cut out for him. Unfortunately, given the delayed timeline for Ngannou's return, it sounds as though a fight with Jones will have to wait until sometime next year. Before we continue, make sure you give that like button some love, and be sure to subscribe to the MMA Zone for all of the latest news. Molly McCann shares advice Conor McGregor gave her. The UFC 281 card is absolutely stacked, and there's no other way to say it. From the main event clash between Israel Adesanya and Alex Pereira to the people's main event between Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler, there are no shortage of thrilling fights on the card. Given that, and the impending retirement of Frankie Edgar following his fight with Chris Gutierrez, it's no surprise that several bouts have flown under the radar. One of those fights is Meatball Molly McCann's fight versus Erin Blanchfield. The two streaking contenders are set to square off in a highly anticipated showdown that will see the winner take a huge jump in the UFC's official rankings. Ahead of the fight, McCann spoke with media members, where she shared some advice from Irish superstar and former two-division champion Conor McGregor regarding fame. As she recalled, she and McGregor met up at the Black Forge Inn, McGregor's pub in Ireland, to share a pint and discuss life.
And I messaged him going, how do you handle this? Because you can blow up and then you can blow up. And I just couldn't quite get my head around how sometimes people are with you. And he was just like, when you're in the gym, it's just the gym. Don't let no one else in. Keep everyone outside. Always remember it's just fighting. You're a cage warrior. That's what we are. We're cage warriors champions. And
of course, McGregor is currently in the midst of gearing up for his own return to the octagon. The former two-division champion has been sidelined since suffering a horrific leg injury in his trilogy fight against Dustin Poirier. Although there was talk of him returning in late 2022 as a result of the 6-month testing period under USADA prior to his return, it'll be at least 6 months before the Irish superstar is eligible to return to the cage. In the meantime, he, like the rest of us, will be tuning in to see if the knockout streak of Meatball Molly McCann will continue at UFC 281. And now for our breaking news story of the day.
18 days before I fought Charles, I was riding my bicycle to the gas station to get some nicotine pouches, and I had like a vicious crash on my bike, smoked my head off the road rash all down my back, and then, go in there and again take that damage that I took in that fight. And that's why I'm taking so much time off. But, no, it's just crazy what we go through. Each and every one of us has different circumstances. That was such a hurdle in my last thing. As soon as it happened, I had to go home and act like it didn't happen. Act like my vision didn't go 100% up for 2 seconds. And as soon as that happened, it's like, okay, what do I do next? How do I continue to improve and continue to just be ready for this fight?
Carla Esparza reflects on being overlooked against Zhang Weili. Earlier this year, former Ultimate Fighter winner Carla Esparza shared the octagon with Rose Namajunas in a highly anticipated rematch for the UFC Women's Strawweight title. Although the pair's first meeting in the Ultimate Fighter Season 20 finale was a thrilling affair, the rematch was anything but. Throughout the course of the fight, both women seemed content to throw feints at one another. In 3 of the 5 rounds, both women landed less than 10 significant strikes. This prompted the fans at Talking Stick Resort Arena in Phoenix to rain down with an avalanche of boos. Ahead of her fight with Zhang Weili at UFC 281, the champ feels as though many are counting her out. Considering the fact that she's been around the UFC longer than her opponent, Esparza isn't sweating the fact that people are doubting her. During a recent interview with MMA Fighting, she spoke about the fight, saying,
"Yeah, it is funny. Before it kind of, I would say early in my career, it would kind of bum me out. I'm like, hey, what, I'm a good fighter. I can, but now it actually does kind of just make me smile and laugh. It almost makes me feel like I know that I kind of have a little secret that, people are just like, hey, I think this is going to happen or that's going to happen. And I'm just kind of like, okay. But deep down, I know, I have my secret. I'm like, you'll see.
The negative fan reaction was something that continued this week during the UFC 281 press conference, where Esparza received a very negative response from the crowd every time she tried to talk. With the fans likely against her come Saturday night, do you think she'll be able to get the job done and defeat Zhang Weili? Give us your predictions for the fight in the comment section below. Thank you so much for joining us today. What do you make of what's going on in the fight world? Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on all the latest news from the MMA Zone. See you next time.